This presentation outlines best practices for model union contracts in the public sector. We explore common elements of labor contracts or labor agreements. It's important to remember that each agency and contract is unique, and as such, make sure to tailor your contract to best fit your particular needs. Your labor contract is an important document which clearly articulates the negotiated terms and conditions of employment between your agency and the identified bargaining unit. Most labor agreements will have many of the same components used to clearly describe the terms and protect the parties from ambiguity and grievances. We're going to discuss the 10 most common components of a written labor agreement, including recognition, definitions, management rights, probation, grievance, discipline, hours of work, wages, complete agreement, and duration clauses. The recognition article is included in an agreement to identify the bargaining unit covered by the agreement. This should be drafted as accurately as possible because it will establish not only the individuals covered in the bargaining unit, but will also be used to establish what's considered bargaining unit work. The definitions section defines the terms commonly used in the balance of the collective bargaining agreement. The more terms that are defined, and the more specific the definition, the less likely there's to be a dispute about whether a term is unclear. The management rights clause is probably the most important portion of the collective bargaining agreement. This article should reserve as much right to management as not specifically limited in other areas of the collective bargaining agreement. A section defining probationary periods is sometimes included in the general article on seniority. Probationary periods are important to include because they provide the employer with an evaluation period for the employee. The probationary period can be designated for any reasonable length in negotiations, and part-time employees could be subject to the requirement based on hours worked rather than the simple passage of time. Minnesota state statute requires that all contracts include a grievance procedure providing for compulsory, binding arbitration of grievances, including all written disciplinary actions. The most important element of a grievance procedure is to define what's considered a grievance. Good practice is to limit its application to a claimed violation of a specific contract provision. The general provision in a discipline article establishes that discipline should be for just cause. The employer's objective in this section is for the discipline language to allow the broadest authority to determine the nature of punishment based on a variety of factors, including prior history and the nature of an offense. Issues related to hours of work are among the most important management rights for the employer. The Federal Fair Labor Standards Act requires employees to receive overtime for all hours actually worked in excess of 40 hours in a one-week period. Wages will be subject to wide variations in negotiation. The simpler the better is the general rule for compensation plans in your labor agreements. Often, the listing of individual wages is prohibitive, particularly where there are merit-based programs or other systems in which exact pay cannot be determined at the time the agreement is signed. A complete agreement article is important in your union contract because it provides that once the union has signed off on the contract and the employer has done likewise, it can't keep coming back to seek to negotiate more issues with the employer during the contract term. Finally, a duration article provides that the contract continues from a designated start date to the end date provided, and provides a date by which the union must notify the employer of a desire to negotiate a successor agreement. Contracts in the state of Minnesota cannot exceed 3 years. Now, this was admittedly a quick overview of common sections or articles of your labor contracts. Other sections of your labor agreements commonly could include benefit information such as insurance, holiday and sick pay, sick leave, and seniority.